All right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May edition of the Poetry Playhouse reading series. And we're glad that you're joining us live or via YouTube. Tonight's feature, we're pleased to announce, is Michelle Otero. I think that Jules and I first met Michelle back in 2018 when she did a reading at our Albuquerque location then. That was shortly after Michelle was named Albuquerque's Poet Laureate. And it's been gratifying to see her continued growth as a writer and community activist in the intervening years. Tonight, she'll be reading from her new riveting memoir called Vessels. Is from Flower Song Press, and it's just came out in March of this year. There was a wonderful book launch at the Albuquerque Museum with, I don't know, 150, 200 people or so in attendance. It was amazing. And it's a memoir. It's a story of an individual, yes, but also I think the story of a family and the story of a people. And I think you'll understand some of that when you hear her. Originally from the town of Deming in southern New Mexico, Michelle Otero holds a BA in history from Harvard University and an MFA in creative writing from Vermont College. In between colleges, she spent 2 years doing volunteer work in one of the poorest neighborhoods of Belize City. She's the author of Malinche's Daughter, an essay collection based on her work with women survivors of sexual violence and domestic violence, that she did in Oaxaca, Mexico, as a Fulbright Fellow. And she's the author of Bosque Poems, University of New Mexico Press 2021, a collection written during her 2018 to 2019 tenure as Poet Laureate, where her community project was a very different one, a great one called Walk with Poets, that encouraged poets to explore the city's Paseo del Bosque, a 16-mile nature trail that runs along the Rio Grande. Her memoir, I mentioned her memoir, Vessels. She's a member of the Macondo Writers Workshop founded by Sandra Cisneros, and she performs with Las Meganenas, an Albuquerque-based troupe that uses theater to raise awareness of issues facing Latinas. She also has a bi-weekly Zoom meeting called Alone Together. She'll give you some info on that. Michelle is a certified professional coach, a creativity consultant, and a racial equity and healing practitioner. She led the facilitation team for Albuquerque's Race History and Healing Project, has worked with fellow artists and local farmers to implement the Community Table Project, which combines art, local agriculture, and economic development as a platform for neighborhood revitalization. Michelle served as a coach mentor to the inaugural class of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation Community Leadership Network Fellows, and she's a founding member of the Tiaso Artist Cooperative. I'm quite pleased to introduce Michelle Otero.
Thank you. Hi, John. Hi, Jules. Thank you, everyone. Good to be here with you tonight, and thank you all for attending. And I think this event might actually bring the rain. I can smell the rain smell from where I am. So, John, should I just do I take it away from here? Just jump in and read. All right,
take it away.
So I'll be reading completely from Vessels. It is. As John mentioned, it's a memoir of borders, and it's written in a combination of, I've written some dreams, some poems, some one-line reflections with really long titles, some longer essays. So just to preface, the book is written as ceremony. So in traditional Mexican medicine, in curanderismo, there's a ceremony to the 7 directions, to the 4 cardinal directions, east, west, north, and south, as well as to the sky, the earth, and then the heart, or really the ombligo, which is the belly button, that thing that connects us back not only to our mother, but to Mother Earth. So that is how the book is written. So I wanted folks to get the feel that they were going through ceremony with me. And so that's how I'll read it this evening. I'll probably only do the 4 cardinal directions. If you want the other 3, you gotta get the book and read it. And there's a couple of Mexica or Aztec goddesses that I'll be referencing in the book. And the main one is the moon goddess, Coyolxauhqui. So from the Jade Oracle, which is a really beautiful deck that was created by a group of women, it kind of talks about different deities in Mexica mythology, and then it's accompanied by really beautiful artwork. But what I gleaned from that deck is that, and these are the 2 epigraphs that appear in the book, Coyolxauhqui appears in your life when you feel broken into pieces. The Coyolxauhqui imperative is to heal and achieve integration. The Coyolxauhqui imperative is an ongoing process of making and unmaking. So the first was from the Jade Oracle, the second from Gloria Ansaldúa. So I'll read first from the prologue, which is called Variations on the Death of Coyolxauhqui. Coyolxauhqui bells her cheeks, breasts hang down, mother. Her son Huitzilopochtli grew restless and wanted to leave their home, Coatepetl, or Snake Mountain. Coyolxauhqui wanted to stay. My impulse was always to leave, to find a place far from home and make a new home there, with new people, new stories, to rest, to get it right this time. Wigglesworth G31, 19 Partridge Street, Belize City, 1140 and a half 11th Street Northwest, a guest room in my brother and sister-in-law's house in El Paso, corner of Cliff and Stanton, an 18-minute walk to my first writing class at UT El Paso. Back in my childhood bedroom in Deming, Grandma and Grandpa's spare room, Casa de Huéspedes, Martires de Tacubaya, Oaxaca, Centro, a house on a hill in La Chigolo. I flirted with the lover's terreno on the outskirts of Oaxaca, a writer's house in San Antonio, a widowed friend's empty room in Manhattan. I came back to New Mexico. I borrowed a friend's old town casita in Albuquerque, house sat for a golfer in Algodones, and then signed a lease on my own downtown apartment with high ceilings and wood floors. Huitzilopochtli cut off her head and ate her heart. Then he led the Mexica to Tenochtitlan. Coyolxauhqui wanted to stay. My apartment, the entire building, died by fire. The Mexica found a home. Was there no other way? How does suffering yield such light? How does a woman fit in a stone? How does a woman fit in a circle? What is my frame? How do I twist, turn, bend, break my body to fit? Coyoli, small metal bells, warrior. Coyolxauhqui, string of bells around her calves, warrior. Carved in 9-ton stone, 1 foot thick. Coyolxauhqui, broken woman. Sometimes babies break us, sometimes it's men we love, sometimes it's both. The gods of our ancestors don't fuck around. Guatlique, claw-feet mother, wore a skirt of intertwined serpents and a necklace of human hands and hearts. Daughter Coyolxauhqui's severed head became the moon. Huitzilopochtli was born fully formed, fully armed, a ray of lightning in his hand. My grandma smoked Kent 3100s and picked our pimples with blunt fingernails. In Mexico, Jesus weeps. We are all Coyolxauhqui, we who defend our home, we who say the hard thing, we who warn, we who won't be taken, we who disagree, who see, who speak truth. How do we put ourselves back together? East, Tlahuitzlampa, rumbo de la luz, rumbo del aprendizaje, rumbo donde sale el sol. East, way of light, way of learning, way from which the sun comes. I think my grandpa's tremors started when I was in kindergarten. He'd talk about childhood, about basic training, the ship that took him to France. I stayed away from him then. Instead of sitting on the couch while he rocked on the recliner, I'd sit in the kitchen with my mom and grandma. He can't remember what he had for breakfast. At home, my mom told my dad, they think he has Alzheimer's. He couldn't stop trembling. They told my grandma he had Parkinson's. We didn't know the side effects of Haldol, muscle spasms, stiffness, shaking or tremors, restlessness, mask-like facial expressions, drooling. This was my grandpa those years I was in preschool, kindergarten, first and second grade. I wondered, why does he move like that? What's wrong with him? We didn't know that years of Haldol would cause tardive dyskinesia, that the chances of getting TD go up the longer one takes an antipsychotic, that for my grandpa, TD meant the stiff, jerky movements were permanent. We didn't know that the drugs he was given to treat TD might cause depression. He broke. No one in the family said it, but what else could we call Grandpa sitting on his living room recliner, rocking back and forth, not talking, staring at a blank television screen? Grandpa squatting and turning the television dial, a machine gun rat-a-tatting past Bonanza Braves, Ricky Ricardo, Big Bird. He lands on a laugh track. I think he'll go back to his chair, but he turns the knob again. Colonel Klink, Genie, Get Smart, SWAT. He turns the knob again and again. He does this all afternoon. Grandpa marching along the fence like he's on patrol from one end of the front yard to the other and back. Grandpa running after high school kids in a green Mustang. Slow down, he yells, scooping a fistful of dirt and hurling it toward the street. Grandpa locking himself in the bathroom and threatening to swallow all of his pills. I wasn't there for that part. No one told me the story. Over the years, it broke apart and scattered. I'm trying to sweep up the pieces, to shape them into a story that heals us. I don't know if my grandpa kid out on his own or if my mom kicked the door in, if she found him passed out or standing in the tub fully closed. I don't know if an ambulance was called or his stomach pumped, if he really took the pills or turned the prescription bottles over the toilet and flushed. I only know that after that day, he got worse before he got better. He ended up in the VA psych ward in Albuquerque. I don't know how she did it, how she made them listen, but my grandma made the doctors take him off every medication. She made them start again with nothing, just my grandpa and his memories. That week between hospital stays, Grandpa declares his intentions to Grandma. Vieja, we don't have to move in with the kids. I'll take care of you. Siempre te voy a cuidar. Grandma replies, Tino, you don't know nothing. Grandpa dreams after. We were taking a trip in that old pickup I used to have. Gina was sitting next to me. The kids were little and they rode in the truck. We drove through a meadow in Texas and the clouds were low, like they are today. The truck broke down because they used Japanese parts. I told them, don't use Japanese parts. I couldn't find your mama or your uncle. I turned to your grandma y le digo, where's Cookie and Perry? But she doesn't answer. She wore a long dress like they did in the pioneer days and long sleeves with a belt made of cloth y un moño aquí to the side and a hat like the woman used to protect them from the sun. I ask her again, where's Cookie y Perry? But she doesn't answer me. It's your grandma, but I can't see her face. I can't see her face, mija. I'm going to write that dream. It has to be in Spanish. The spelling will be wrong. Grandpa vows, after. I won't take off my wedding ring as long as I'm alive. Grandpa vows, after, I promise not to get married again. What Grandpa says when a friend invites him to shoot pool as a way to get him out of the house. After, me with a stick, I probably couldn't even hit the mountain. Pesado, winter, after. High on Grandpa's cheekbone, under his left eye, blood congeals on what looks like a shaving cut, except that it's on a hairless part of his face. What happened? I ask as he holds onto my arm and steps out of the van. Oh, he says, looking past me toward the toll of bells from St. Anne's Church across the street. Dreams, I guess. We'll have to get you some mittens, like those sleepers they have for babies. He doesn't laugh at my joke, doesn't even smile. He straightens his fedora and walks past me toward the entrance to St. Anne's. My grandma would have made him wipe the blood from his face. You can't go out looking like that, Tino. We reach the wooden door of the church together. I hold it open for him as he pats my head as he passes into the entryway. He dips his fingers into the holy water font and crosses his forehead and murmurs to himself, to his dead wife, to Saint Anne and La Virgen, maybe even to me, es muy duro, mija. Pesa mucho. Grandpa dreams. After. This time she talked to me. Estamos en el doctor's office. She's wearing a short dress like when she was young. You could see her legs. She was sitting and she had people all around her, needles, y blood pressure, y todo. When I walk in, she looks up and says to me, they're going to pump you full of pills. Grandpa dreams. After. To tell you the truth, mija, I think she just wants me to leave her alone. Next, we're going to move to the west, Cihuatlampa, Puesto del Sol, Rumbo de las Mujeres, donde todo lo innecesario se entrega, where the sun sets, way of the women, where everything unnecessary is left behind. Positive, indicating the presence of a disease, condition, or organism as a diagnostic test, the spot on her lung, a plus sign, a cross. Grandma China wants me to have a husband and kids before she dies, and she's not even sick yet. There was this woman in church today, Micheli. She looked just like you, pero she was beautiful. Her hair was long and she wore makeup. And I told your grandpa, Micheli would look pretty if she wore lipstick. You can see I heeded her lesson. Home after having her cancerous lung removed, grandma catches grandpa slouching. Stop walking like an old man. Look at him, Micheli. You'd think I was already dead. She's not supposed to talk during oxygen treatment, so instead, grandma turns over the tissue box on her rolling table and writes a note to mom, grandpa, and me. Feel 90% better. Thank our Lord and family, doctores, and hospital staff. Love, mom. Acute, of disease, brief and severe. Our last conversation. You know we're proud of you, right? What I thought but didn't say. Sometimes. Acute respiratory distress syndrome. The mortality rate associated with ARDS is 30 to 40%. If ARDS is accompanied by sepsis, the mortality rate may reach 90%. Median survival is about 2 weeks. Many patients who succumb to ARDS and its complication die after withdrawal of support. Mañanitas, that day. Spires of morning sunlight cut through the broken glass tops of the Organ Mountains, pricking my fingers as I massage grandma's hand. Her skin is like falling cottonwood leaves after a winter storm, an infinite mosaic of cells I could rub off with my touch. I work my way up her arm, avoiding the IV and yellow-green bruises where her veins caved under needles. I can't see it today, but I know a bed sore stains her back. It's hard to think of the sore as part of her, like the mole on her neck. I imagine the sore as bloodletter, or a portal I might enter and live inside her rib cage where her lung used to be, protected by her bones, expanding her chest with my own breath. I think she can still hear me. Please don't go, I ask. Last night, my mom and I spent a few hours on fold-out chairs next to her bed and left when the room was still dark to shower in my parents' hotel room. My suitcase is still in transit somewhere between Vermont and the Albuquerque airport, or between the airport and Las Cruces, so I am wearing my cousin's khaki pants, sneakers, and sweater, and the reserve underwear I always pack in my carry-on. Please. She hasn't opened her eyes or spoken for 3 days. It's hard to remember her without the tube in her throat, her tongue swollen and stuck to that tube, her lips parted, cracked. I don't know if she's thirsty. I don't know what she feels or if. I miss her voice, cigarettes and caliche, Jack Daniels, red chile and a rolling pin, the tumbleweed she'd spray, paint Christmas white, hijo de la patada, and the hell with him. Critical care is the other family holding down the waiting room table with a jumbo bag of takis, bottles of apple mirinda, and burritos wrapped in foil. Only 2 visitors at a time allowed back to each patient's room, and only after checking in with the old white lady attendant who never says please or thank you and has to buzz you in by pushing a button beneath her desk. It's 2 college football games on 2 different television station channels mounted in the corners of the waiting room. It's Grandpa sitting alone in the consultation room, hands resting on the curve of his cane, an empty chair next to him. I sit, touch his hand. She's gone, he says, his voice a hiccup. I want to say she's not gone yet, not completely. It's not yet 5 o'clock. The machines are still connected. Her heart is still beating. We can still touch her. We can still talk and sing to her, but she's gone enough, more gone than she's ever been. She's gone, she's gone, she's gone, he says over and over until the space between the words disappears. She gone, she gone, she gone, she gone, she gone, she gone, she gone. Distress, acute medical or physical suffering, affliction, trouble, distress, a state of extreme necessity or misfortune. South, Huitzlampa, rumbo del niño anterior, de la niñez, rumbo de la voluntad. Place of the inner child, of childhood and infancy, place of free will. I have my little tabs, but my pages are sticking together. Here we go. Grandpa hit her once. It happened during his worst time. Flashbacks, medications contraindicating, dropping weight, threats of suicide, before our people, our family, had language for trauma, for what war does to a soul. He hid in a motel 40 miles up State Road 26. My uncle found him crouched in a corner of the room eating saltines and a banana. He could have thrown my grandpa over his shoulder and carried him to the car, but there was no fight. He told my grandpa he was driving him to Albuquerque to visit family, and it was only 3 hours later, after they passed the familiar exit to my aunt's house, that grandpa knew he was going to VA, to the psych ward, and he would not go home for a long time. My grandma didn't die covered with the Mexican blanket and floral sheets I turned down for the night when I stay in her house, now without her. But I think she would have liked to die here, at the hospital between visiting hours, on long nights when the blood pressure machine woke her every hour. She told us she thought of the food she would eat at home. Simple things, black coffee, pinto beans and Spanish rice, a red apple with the wax she'd scrape off with a paring knife. Look at that, she'd say. They put that on the fruit to make it shine. She must have missed the smell of frying onions, of fabric softener and fabuloso. She must have missed, without ever saying it, this bed she made every morning, stripping and changing the sheets once a week. She died in a hospital in Las Cruces, 60 miles from here. Her heart stopped beating on a bed where many had died, and once she was still, the room cleared, the papers signed, we had to leave her. Death takes our people in more ways than one. The body goes to strangers, and we journey home alone, her spirit trailing our taillights through desert darkness. There was a time when our people died in their homes. The family kept the body and prayed over it for 9 days. Our novena is almost over, and we've recited no prayers, save the rosary the night before she was cremated. Our obligations pile up like the newspapers by the front door, the unthanked sympathy cards on her kitchen table, the medication in Grandpa's pillbox, this mound of skin I scrape off the calluses from my toes. And beneath it all, with the clutter cleared, the rough exterior removed, perhaps life is new again, soft to the touch, and more beautiful than we could ever imagine. But we didn't ask for new life. Nobody does. Dream. Grandma is a healer operating out of a one-room adobe in the desert. Pilgrims crump near her open doorway where a pale yellow sheet hangs from nails. She doesn't take appointments. Spirit moves her to determine who she'll see and in what order. I watch her through a window. She dances barefoot in a flowered cotton skirt. Her hair is loose and held back by a woven scarf. She lays her hands on a woman's shoulders. The woman begins to dance and speak in tongues. The woman's lover joins. They hold hands and dance in a circle. Out of the corner of her eye, Grandma sees me and nods toward me. I wait. When the ritual ends, Grandma greets the two men standing next to me. I want to tell them she's more than a healer. She's my grandma. She was dead and now she's a healer. She puts her hand on my elbow and guides me into the house. As soon as we are out of the men's field of vision, I hug her. She squeezes me. I don't let go. Grandma, I plead into her shoulder, please come back. We need you so much. She releases me and whispers, you will find peace in the presence of spirit and children. What I write in my journal later that day, but I don't really like kids. Afraid to feel too good too soon. Depression. What if the meds stop working? Anxiety. Fight with my Oaxaca novio who calls me by a nickname. ¿Sabes, Mickey? I think you hate men. What happened in El Paso with bad boyfriend? He smoked and I coughed. He drank and my liver scarred. He burned through me. Malinche, Michelle, we are survivors. We don't want to be anymore. Surely we deserve to live. I think I will leave it there for the evening. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jules and John, for hosting and for all you do for poetry in our community.
Thank you, Michelle.
you,
And I was
Michelle.
wondering if we could unmute and give Michelle a round of our appreciation. So, yeah.
Oh,
All right.
Wonderful.
incredible.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Brava, brava.
Incredible rhythm that
Excellent.
takes you all the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah, and we have a few minutes for discussion, and I guess maybe the easiest way for questions, if you have some, is to put them in the chat. And I just I love the way you took pieces from different parts of the book and wove them together into another whole, you know. And you talk about vessels as a ritual or series of rituals. You use terms like healing, bridges. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the concept of the book and how it does those things, or what does it mean to do those things?
I think that, you know, like with memoir, it's you can't really say to anybody who appears in the book, like, no, that's not you. So there's that. So there's that piece of it. And I think in some of my coaching work when I'm coaching people who are writing stories about their families or stories that are hard, they jump right to publication. Like, I don't know what's going to happen when this book is published. And then I always back up and ask, like, how much have you written? You actually have to write it first for it to get published, and maybe you write it and nothing ever becomes of it. So, or maybe you write it and it does have an arc and it does feel complete, and you feel that it's a story that could speak to other people. And I think that was definitely the process with this book. It appears when it's time. For me, so when it was time for me, it took me 18 years to write this, and I started writing it in the hospital when my grandma was dying. You know, she was a lifelong smoker and was diagnosed with lung cancer in November, and she was gone by January. It was very swift, and because she was always the strong one and the one who took care of my grandpa. And I think you get a sense of her feistiness, and also the sense of like that she was invincible. She was the kind of person who should have lived forever, and probably would have if sheer will just made that happen. So I think for a long time, I wasn't sure. I knew there were certain stories that were going to be in this book, and then they all had to come together. But I didn't know what like the glue was or what the format would be. And then I was fortunate enough somewhere, you know, the good thing about working on something for 18 years is like you get lots of resources along the way. So one of those resources was one of my writing mentors at Vermont College, Sue Williams Silverman, who's an amazing writer and poet and a great teacher. And one of her pieces of writing advice was the individual story is the universal story. So because I think with memoir, some of it can feel very indulgent. And she was like, you know, for this, without your story, there is no story. This story makes no sense without your story. So there were places where I tried to write myself out of it. And then her advice was always to write myself back into it. So I think that was part of it. And then one of the other gifts was taking the curanderismo course at UNM. So Dr. Eliseo Torres has this wonderful course every summer. And the first week is like lecture and learning about herbs and different modalities of healing. But the second week, and you can feel the shift, all of these healers come from Mexico, and then they offer their gifts of healing to the community. So it's everything from like a sobado, which is like a massage, or a limpia, which is like a spiritual healing. I'll put the spelling into the chat, but yes, it is curanderas. and so and then each morning of the class starts with ceremony, with facing the 4 directions, and then some people do the other 3, the sky, the earth, and the ombligo, or the belly. So I think there were times that ceremony kept coming back to me, and then that's where it was like, oh, duh. Like I don't know why it took so long, but when it crystallized, it was like, that's the way to write the story. That each of those directions held something symbolic that I was already writing, and it was almost like that was the missing piece. And that just felt like a total gift.
And I think it works beautifully to bring it all together. And I wanted to add that you're in a great New Mexico tradition, because two of the classics of New Mexican literature are Rudolph Anaya's Bless Me Ultima and Leslie Marmon Silko's Ceremony. So
yes,
very much in that tradition, and wonderfully. And there are many more. I also, you talked about, what was the phrase your teacher gave of that the individual story is the universal story, and it's so refreshing to read a memoir that's not just about I, but it's about we, and I think that brings so much more to it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I owe some of that to I think it was pressing up against the floor, but it didn't I just reached a point where, fortunately, right when I was ready to give up, Jennifer Gavon, who is amazing, and if you are not reading Jen, you should be reading Jen or taking her work, and we're so fortunate that she's coming back to New Mexico in the fall. But she's also a coach, and she reached out, said, I'm starting my coaching business. Do you have anything? And I was like, I have 120 pages of something, and then like notes on gum wrappers, like text messages and voice memos. So can I just send everything to you? And I think she felt the stuff that was pressing up against the floor with like the mythology and the ancestral stuff that I was trying to write. And then she was like, great, just do it on purpose, like write a prologue and then have your epilogue. So when all of that shows up in the middle, it'll be hearkening back to something. It won't be confusing for folks. So yeah, I had to give her a shout out.
I also just wanted to add that it was wonderful to see so many of your family members there at the book launch, especially given the fact that you are dealing with some very, very tough subjects that certainly divided, I'm sure, the family opinion about. So yeah, so that was a nice gesture of support, I thought.
Yeah, I think that it's just a hard thing, and I don't think there's any. I think there's lots of wrong ways to do this, and I don't know that there's like one right way, but I again just really got great coaching from a friend who said, just print it out, send a copy to each member of your family and ask to have a conversation with them. And that's instead of, I don't know, Martina Espada talks about how the best place to hide a poem is between the pages of a book. but I think and again, it's different when it's memoir because it's, it's about people. So, I don't use people's names, and there are some composite characters in here. And I just think about like, I don't believe anybody benefits from shame or secrecy. And so if my writing and that process I went through of truth telling and asking for conversations, those acts of bridging, if that can contribute to the next generation's healing and their ability to walk through this world a little lighter, then I'll feel like I've done my work. And I already feel that in a lot of ways. And yes, so having my family there was really, it was a result of that invitation and hard conversations. And it was not without some bumps, but it's also, it's that thing. Some of the work that I do is around like helping people have hard conversations, and they're like, oh, well, what do I do so I'm not uncomfortable? And I was like, you'd have to be dead. Like those conversations are always uncomfortable. and it's like the difference between like discomfort and safety, right? So it's okay, we should always feel safe, and you should absolutely feel uncomfortable. And it's only through that tension that we grow, that relationship deepens, and that we that we find our way in right relationship with each other.
And it sounds like the work you've done as a coach, as a counselor, and so forth have helped in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had to call on like all of my all of my skills.
Well, we got a couple minutes if anybody has a question, or Jules, if you noticed anyone having any. I haven't been able.
Not in the chat, but yeah, Michelle, can you talk about maybe how this all ties together? I know you were Poet Laureate, and you had a lot of community work with that, and you have like the Bosque book. You have your coaching and writing, and your own readings. And then you have this Alone Together writing. I guess talk about the Alone Together, since it's coming up tomorrow, right? And what is it about just writing together? Something I know, you write by yourself, but when you're with a community, even if you're not saying a word, you have that community or talk. What inspired you to start that?
I think just like on a really practical level, like having other people around me, and I don't need this all the time, but when I need it, it's really helpful. It just keeps my butt in the chair. Like if I'm hosting something and I'm telling people like I'm setting a timer for 45 minutes and each of us will write quietly alone in the presence of others, then it keeps me in the chair and keeps me writing for 45 minutes. So if I'm up and down, then I feel like I'm being dishonest about what I'm inviting people to. And sometimes all I need is just that little. All I need is that 45 minutes to get over the hump or to get over myself. There's something magical about that chunk of time. So I tried to do Alone Together when I was Poet Laureate, where, we tried to host it in different places around Albuquerque, and it just didn't take off. But when the pandemic started, we all moved to Zoom. I think people were really looking for community. And it's not just open to writers, it's open to painters and musicians, as long as we're muted. So painters, musicians, all sorts of creatives, just come and be creative alone in the company of other folks. We set a timer for 45 minutes and then we check in with each other at the end. So there's no prompt, but it's just, I think sometimes just being able to look up at the screen. And I know, Arlena attends sometimes, Gina, I think we'll get Gina Marcel travel back now that it's summertime. We're almost summer vacation. Sharon Gross joins. Luz Similor is a regular. Martha Hurd. And then every now and then we've got, Anel Flores will tune in from San Antonio. Yeah, so we've just got, it's like just this little eclectic community, but I think we've been going every other Wednesday from 9 to 10 since 2020. So
Wow.
I hold the space and then people just drop in. So all of you are welcome to come. You don't have to register. We haven't been Zoom bombed yet, so I think we're small enough still. Yeah, it's 9 a.m. Mountain Time, and I think I dropped a link to it. I can drop that back into chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's always good. One of the advantages of Zoom. So let's see. Somebody was asking, and I know we asked you about that at the beginning, the painting behind you. Can you talk about that?
I wish I could claim responsibility for this. So this is an amazing artist named Alberto Gutierrez. He coincidentally is is also a hair artist. He's the person who does my hair. And he's a good friend of our family. So he's done a few paintings in our home. My husband, Henry, was really interested in having a tree of life that also incorporated elements of death. And Alberto also, actually, I should say, like sitting in Alberto's chair, we would talk a lot about like a lot of the stuff that's in this book. I was like, am I getting the moon goddess things right? What about this thing? What about this aspect? What does this god do? And how about this deity? So, a lot of the symbolism on the trees, incorporates kind of like pre-Columbian Mexican symbols. And then you'll see like in the nest, there's an egg, so birth, and then there's also a skull, which is death. I have been encouraging Alberto to get a website. I don't think he has one yet, but I will drop a link to his Facebook page. He's been painting a lot since the pandemic started, and we're all better and luckier for it.
Great. And do you want to say your website for the recording?
Oh, yeah. So my website is michelle-otero.com, michelle-otero.com. And Otero is Otero.
Anything else, John, or are we good? I think we're
good.
I love having these conversations.
Yeah, urge everybody to pick up a copy. And I think that locally, Bookworks, organic books, anywhere else you want to mention?
Yeah, Books on the Bosque has it. And then I'm usually carrying around 3 copies, but I'm also happy to to mail signed copies to folks. But I know there are signed copies at Bookworks, and there should be some signed copies still at Books on the Bosque. And there was one signed copy at Organic Books last time I was there last week.
Are there still copies at the museum?
Oh, yes, there should be. Yeah, that's
yes.
great.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. The bookstore at the museum. Yeah. Gift
Yeah.
shop. Yeah. Good.
And online for all of those who aren't here. And I look forward to finishing it. I know John was reading it, and I'll have to read it after he's done, and I've heard your excerpts, so I would call it a poetic memoir in a way too.
Very poetical.
Yeah. That's the spirit of it.
Well, thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can we have another round of applause for our featured